I wasn't invited. Not this year. Not last year. Not once in the past 12 years. But this year, I had the keys. And they, the people who erased my name from the family, would walk straight into that house, not knowing who really owned it now. The reunion invitation sat in my inbox, marked Family Reunion 2025. 23 names on the list. Mine wasn't one of them. It never was anymore. But for the first time in over a decade, I didn't feel that familiar ache in my chest. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Power. Madison Blake. That's what the nameplate on my corner office read. Strategic Director, Meridian Investment Group, Chicago. At 36. I'd built a career on reading people's intentions before they even knew them themselves. It was a skill that served me well in boardrooms, and apparently, one I'd need for family warfare. The email notification chimed at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that felt like any other. Family Reunion 2025. Save the date. The subject line might as well have been written in a foreign language for all the warmth it carried. I opened it with the same clinical detachment I reserved for quarterly reports. There was Amanda's perfectly crafted message, complete with cheerful exclamation points and beach emojis. The usual suspects were all there: Mom, Uncle Robert, Cousin Lisa, the Hendersons from Dad's side. 23 names, arranged alphabetically for maximum organization, Amanda's specialty. My name should have fallen between Lisa Martinez and Robert Peterson. Instead, there was just empty space where I used to exist. 12 years. 12 years since Dad's funeral, when everything changed. Before that, I was the family's golden child, the one who'd escaped our small coastal town, who'd made something of herself in the big city. They used to beam when they talked about my success, my corner office, my rising salary. But success, I learned, is only celebrated when it doesn't come at the cost of presence. When Dad got sick, I couldn't just drop everything and move home. I had a promotion coming, a team depending on me, a life I'd built brick by brick. I visited when I could, called every day, sent money for treatments they couldn't afford. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. The phone calls grew shorter, the updates stopped coming. When Dad died, I found out from a neighbor's Facebook post, not from my own family. At the funeral, I sat in the back row like a distant acquaintance, watching Amanda play the devoted daughter who'd been there until the end. That's when the erasure began. Family photos on social media suddenly cropped me out or featured mysterious gaps where I used to stand. Birthday cards stopped arriving. Christmas presents went unacknowledged. When people asked about me, I became the one who was too busy to visit or simply living her life in Chicago. I tried for years. Sent flowers for Mother's Day, gifts for the kids' birthdays, checks when I heard about financial troubles. Each gesture met with polite, distant thank you notes that felt like rejection letters. The annual reunion at Seabrook Shore became my yearly reminder of how thoroughly I'd been excommunicated. Photos would appear on Facebook afterward, everyone laughing, everyone together, everyone who mattered. The caption was always the same. Another perfect Blake family reunion. Perfect, because I wasn't there to complicate it. The real estate newsletter arrived on a Thursday morning, buried in my inbox between quarterly projections and client updates. I almost deleted it, another generic market report I'd subscribed to years ago and forgotten about. But something in the subject line caught my eye. Exclusive coastal properties, Seabrook Shore listings. My coffee grew cold as I scrolled through luxury beachfront homes, vacation rentals, and investment opportunities. Then I saw it. A photograph that made my breath catch in my throat. The Blake family beach house, our sanctuary. The place where I'd spent every summer of my childhood. Where Dad taught me to fish off the back deck. Where Mom used to read to us while waves crashed outside. The house that had hosted every family reunion for the past 15 years. Historic Seabrook Shore Estate, 2.8 meter, motivated seller. The listing was sparse, professional, cold. No mention of the memories those walls held, the laughter that had echoed through those rooms, the traditions that had been born and died there. Just square footage, bedroom count, and proximity to the beach. I clicked through the photos with trembling fingers. The kitchen where Amanda and I used to make pancakes, the living room where we'd play board games during rainy afternoons, the master bedroom where Dad would retreat when the cancer treatments left him too weak to socialize. They were selling it, without a word to me, without even the courtesy of a heads up. I reached for my phone, fingers hovering over Amanda's number. Then I stopped. What would I say? How dare you not tell me? They'd made it clear I wasn't part of their decisions anymore. I was the outsider, the one who'd chosen career over family, the one who didn't deserve to know. But something nagged at me. I pulled up the property records, a skill I'd developed during my years in investment analysis. The current owner was listed as Seabrook Holdings LLC, a company I'd never heard of. Registered in Delaware, minimal public information, established just 6 months ago. Amanda's handiwork, no doubt. She'd always been the organized one, the one who handled the family's practical matters. But Amanda was also careless with details when she was emotional. And losing Dad's house would have been emotional. I spent the next 2 hours digging through public records, cross-referencing dates, following paper trails. The house had been in Dad's name when he died, part of his estate. The will had been probated quickly, quietly. But there was something else, a document I'd almost forgotten about. Years ago, when Dad first bought the place, he'd made me co-sign some paperwork. Insurance, he'd called it. In case something happens to the property, someone needs to be able to step in. I'd been fresh out of college, barely understanding what I was signing. Now I understood. Dad had created a contingency clause. If the property faced foreclosure, tax liens, or unclear ownership transfer, the backup inheritor would be me. It was buried in legal language, forgotten in the chaos of his death. Overlooked in Amanda's rush to consolidate family assets. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. The house wasn't just being sold, it was being sold improperly. Without proper insurance coverage, with outstanding tax issues Amanda had apparently ignored. For the first time in 12 years, I smiled, thinking about my family. Sophie Grant picked up on the second ring, her voice carrying that familiar mix of professional efficiency and genuine warmth that had made her my closest friend since law school. Madison, please tell me you're not calling about another merger at 9 p.m. I need you to look at something, I said, already scanning the documents into my computer. Real estate law, family property, and I need you to be very, very thorough. Sophie had built her practice on meticulous attention to detail, the kind that had saved my company millions in botched acquisitions. If anyone could find the loopholes Amanda had missed, it was her. Send it over, she said, and I could hear her settling into what we called her war room mode. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of legal documents, title searches, and conference calls. Sophie worked with the focused intensity of a surgeon, dissecting every clause, every filing, every seemingly insignificant detail that Amanda had overlooked in her grief and haste. Your sister made 3 critical errors, Sophie announced during our Friday morning call, her voice carrying the satisfaction of a chess player announcing checkmate. First, she established the LLC after your father's death, but transferred the property before resolving the estate tax issues. Second, she let the property insurance lapse for 47 days during the transfer process. Third, and this is the beautiful part, she never filed the proper notification paperwork for contingent heirs. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Meaning your father's contingency clause is not only valid, it's been automatically triggered. The property legally reverts to you as the designated backup inheritor. Amanda essentially sold something she never properly owned. The irony was exquisite. Amanda, who'd always prided herself on being the responsible one, the detail-oriented one, had made rookie mistakes that any first-year law student would have caught. Grief, anger, and the assumption that I'd never challenge anything had made her careless. How long will the process take? I asked, already calculating timelines in my head. With the evidence we have, 2 weeks, maybe 3, the current sale will be voided, the LLC dissolved, and the property deed transferred to your name. clean, legal, and absolutely uncontestable. I hung up and pulled up the reunion invitation again. June 15th through 18th. The paperwork would be finalized by June 1st. Perfect timing. I made one more call, this time to the Seabrook Shore Resort and Marina, the same property management company that had handled our family reservations for over a decade. "This is Madison Blake," I said to the reservations manager. "I'd like to book the entire beach house property for June 15th through 18th. Yes, the Blake family house. I'm the new owner." The manager's confusion was audible. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that property is already reserved for the Blake family reunion. The reservation was made by Amanda Blake months ago." "I understand," I said, allowing myself a small smile. "Please cancel that reservation and rebook it under my name. I'll be sending you the new ownership documents within the week. And I'd like to make this a very exclusive event." I hung up and opened my laptop. Fingers poised over the keyboard, it was time to RSVP to the reunion. After 12 years of silence, I had quite a lot to say. June 15th dawned gray and humid, with the kind of oppressive heat that made the Atlantic coast feel like a sauna. I watched from my hotel room across the street as the familiar caravan of cars began arriving at the Seabrook Shore property. The same routine I'd observed from afar through social media for 12 years. Except this time I had a front row seat. Amanda's silver SUV pulled up first, of course. She stepped out wearing her signature white linen outfit, the one that photographed so well for her carefully curated Facebook posts. Mom emerged from the passenger side, moving slower than I remembered, her hair more silver than brown now. The years had aged her in ways I hadn't expected. Uncle Robert's family arrived next, followed by the Hendersons, then the cousins with their growing broods of children I barely recognized. Everyone looked older, tired from the drive, but animated with that familiar reunion energy. They moved with the confidence of people who belonged, who had every right to be there. I waited until they'd all gathered on the front porch, until Amanda had pulled out her phone to take the traditional arrival photo, before I made my move. The walk across the street felt like crossing a battlefield. Each step carried 12 years of silence, 12 years of exclusion, 12 years of careful planning that had led to this moment. I dressed simply, navy blazer, white blouse, the kind of outfit that said professional without screaming corporate shark. The resort's front desk manager, Mrs. Morrison, had been briefed. She looked up as I approached, her expression perfectly neutral despite the chaos that was about to unfold. "Good afternoon, Ms. Blake," she said, her voice carrying across the lobby. "Your reservation is ready, the entire property, as requested." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel 23 pairs of eyes turning toward me, could sense the confusion rippling through the group like a stone dropped in still water. Amanda was the first to recover. "Madison?" Her voice carried that particular tone she'd perfected over the years, the one that suggested I was a mild inconvenience, a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. "What are you doing here?" "I'm checking in," I said, accepting the keycard from Mrs. Morrison with a smile. "To my house." "Your house?" Mom's voice was sharp, disbelieving. "This is our family reunion. We've been coming here for 15 years. "I know." I turned to face them fully, taking in their confused expressions, their shifting postures. "I've been watching from the outside for 12 of those years, but not this year." Mrs. Morrison cleared her throat delicately. "I'm sorry, folks. But there seems to have been some confusion with the reservation. The property is now under new ownership, and only registered guests are permitted on the premises." "There's been a mistake," Amanda said, her voice rising slightly. "I made this reservation months ago. I have the confirmation email. I'm afraid that reservation has been canceled." Mrs. Morrison replied smoothly. "The new owner, Ms. Blake, has reserved the property for a private event." I watched the realization dawn on their faces like a slow sunrise, the confusion shifting to understanding, then to something that looked almost like fear. "I just wanted to make sure," I said, my voice carrying the same cool professionalism I used in board meetings, that everyone knew exactly whose house they were standing in. The story broke on the Seabrook Shore Community Facebook page at 6:47 a.m. the next morning. I was sipping coffee in what used to be Dad's favorite chair on the back deck when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Family feud erupts at local beach house, read the headline from the Coastal Times. Below it, a grainy photo of yesterday's confrontation, clearly taken by someone's phone from across the street. The article painted me as the villain. Of course. Estranged family member uses legal loophole to seize ancestral property during reunion. Anonymous sources, obviously Amanda, described me as bitter and vindictive. Someone who had abandoned the family during their father's final illness and was now capitalizing on a technicality to steal their childhood home. The comments section was brutal. Neighbors who'd known our family for decades expressed their shock and disappointment. How could she do this to her own mother? One read, "Some people have no shame," said another. My phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting a statement, distant relatives demanding explanations. Old family friends expressing their concern with voices dripping false sympathy. But Amanda had made a crucial miscalculation. She'd assumed I was still the same person who'd quietly accepted exclusion for 12 years, who'd swallowed every slight and rejection without fighting back. She'd forgotten that I'd spent those years learning how to wage war in corporate boardrooms, how to anticipate attacks, and prepare counterstrikes. I'd been ready for this. The press release went out at 2 p.m., distributed through a professional PR firm I'd retained years ago for corporate crisis management. The headline was simple. Local woman reclaims family home after years of exclusion. The supporting documentation was devastating. Screenshots of family group chats where Amanda joked about keeping Madison in the dark. Email chains discussing reunion plans with explicit instructions to make sure she doesn't find out. Bank records showing my financial support for Dad's medical bills, support that had been minimized and hidden from other family members. But the most damaging piece was something I'd discovered in Dad's papers during my legal research. A handwritten letter he'd sent to Amanda 2 weeks before his death, expressing his disappointment about my exclusion from family gatherings and his hope that someday you'll understand that success doesn't make someone less family. The letter had never been shared with me. Amanda had buried it along with any other evidence of Dad's continued love for his youngest daughter. The second wave of media coverage was entirely different. Grieving daughter fights back against family exclusion. Legal victory exposes years of sibling cruelty. The narrative shifted from greedy opportunist to wronged family member seeking justice. My phone rang again. This time it was Amanda, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. "You can't do this," she said without preamble. "This is our home. Our family's home." "It was," I replied, watching seagulls circle over the waves Dad used to fish in. "Until you decided I wasn't family anymore. We'll fight this. We'll take you to court. We'll get lawyers. Good luck with that," I said, and hung up. The legal challenge came 3 days later, just as I'd expected. Amanda and Mom, represented by a small-town attorney who specialized in estate law, filed an emergency motion to reverse the property transfer. It was time for the final act. The Seabrook County Courthouse felt like a theater on the morning of July 8th. Local reporters packed the gallery, their cameras trained on the Blake family drama that had captivated the small coastal community for weeks. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Sophie, watching Amanda and Mom whisper urgently with their attorney, a nervous-looking man who kept shuffling papers like a dealer with a bad hand. Judge Patricia Whitmore called the court to order with the weary efficiency of someone who'd seen too many family disputes tear apart small towns. She was known for her no-nonsense approach and her intolerance for emotional theatrics. Amanda's lawyer spoke first, painting a picture of a grieving family victimized by legal technicalities. He argued that the contingency clause was outdated, that my father couldn't have intended for it to supersede his clear wishes for family unity. His voice carried the rehearsed passion of a man who knew his case was weak but had to fight anyway. "Your Honor," he concluded, This property has been the heart of the Blake family for over 2 decades. To strip it away on a technicality would be a grave injustice. Sophie stood with the calm confidence of a chess master making her final move. She'd prepared for this moment with surgical precision, and it showed in every gesture, every carefully chosen word. Your Honor, the defendant's claim of technicality is both legally and morally incorrect. She activated the courtroom's display system, showing the property transfer documents. Ms. Amanda Blake and her mother willfully excluded the plaintiff from family gatherings for 12 years. They did so systematically, deliberately, and with full knowledge of the emotional harm they were causing. The evidence unfolded like a devastating symphony. Email chains, text messages, social media posts, bank records showing my financial support for Dad's medical care, juxtaposed with family communications that painted me as absent and uncaring. But the masterpiece came near the end. Sophie played a video file on the courtroom's main screen, and suddenly Dad's voice filled the room. The recording was from his 60th birthday party, 3 years before his death. I'd found it on an old phone during my legal research, a forgotten moment captured by a cousin's camera. In the video, Dad was sitting in the same chair I'd occupied just weeks ago, looking out at the ocean with the contentment of a man at peace. You know what I love most about this place? His voice said, clear and strong despite the illness that would claim him. It's not the house or the view. It's knowing that Madison understands what lasts. When I'm gone, if this place needs someone to protect it, to keep it alive for future generations, it should be her. She's the one who knows that family isn't about proximity. It's about commitment. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of waves outside. Amanda's face had gone pale, and Mom was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Judge Whitmore reviewed the documents one final time, her expression unreadable. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of absolute certainty. The plaintiff's claim is substantiated by both legal documentation and clear evidence of the deceased's intentions. The property transfer is valid, and the defendant's challenge is dismissed. The gavel fell with the finality of thunder. Amanda and Mom left without speaking, their heads bowed, their army of supporters trailing behind them like defeated soldiers. I walked out of that courthouse as the rightful owner of more than just a house. I owned the truth. The house felt different when I returned alone. Not empty, peaceful. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows Dad had installed himself, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors he'd refinished every summer. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't looking at this place through the lens of loss or longing. I was home. I moved through each room slowly, deliberately, like a curator arranging a museum exhibit. In the kitchen, I placed Dad's coffee mug, the one with the faded "World's Best Fisherman" logo, back in its rightful spot on the counter. In the living room, I repositioned the family photos that Amanda had carefully edited over the years, restoring myself to the narrative where I belonged. The master bedroom held the most memories. I sat on the bed where Dad had spent his final months, where he'd called me every evening to talk about the waves, the weather, the birds that visited his feeder. The conversations Amanda had dismissed as Madison's guilt calls, but which had been, in reality, the thread that kept us connected when everyone else was cutting me loose. From his nightstand drawer, I retrieved something I discovered during my legal research, a small leather journal filled with his handwriting, entry after entry about missing me, about hoping the family would heal, about his certainty that someday I'd be the one to bring everyone back together. Madison has the strongest heart. One entry read, "She just shows it differently than the others expect." I carried the journal to the back deck, settling into his chair as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, indifferent to human drama, constant in its rhythm. Dad used to say that the sea was the best teacher because it never apologized for its power, never explained its moods, never begged for understanding. From the storage closet, I retrieved the wind chime he'd made during one of my childhood visits, driftwood and sea glass collected during our morning walks, assembled with the patience of a man who understood that the most beautiful things required time. He'd hung it outside this very window every summer, then carefully stored it each winter to preserve it for the next season. I hung it now in its proper place, watching it catch the evening breeze. The sound it made was exactly as I remembered, gentle, musical, like whispered secrets between the wind and the sea. It was a sound that spoke of continuity, of things that endure despite attempts to erase them. The wind chime swayed gently as darkness fell, carrying its melody across the water and into the night. Somewhere in that sound was Dad's voice, telling me what I'd always known but had forgotten in the years of silence, that belonging isn't something others can take away. It's something you claim for yourself. The house was mine now. The truth was mine. And finally, after 12 years of exile, I was home. Thank you for listening to this story of family, betrayal, and the quiet power of reclaiming what was always yours. I'd love to hear where you're listening from and what this story means to you. Please leave a comment below to share your thoughts, and let's connect with others who understand that sometimes the strongest revenge is simply refusing to disappear. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories and share your own experiences with family dynamics that hit close to home.